I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. And in today's video, I'm here with my November mid-month wrap-up. So it is the middle of November, and so far for the month, I have read 25 books, and so I'm here to wrap those up for you. And as always, if you ever wanted to see more of my thoughts, my full reviews on any of the books I talk about, I do review every book that I read on Goodreads, and you can always get to my Goodreads linked through the description of all of my videos. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the books that I've read. So first up, I was sent an Arc of the Governess and the Orc by Finley Finn. This is the 7th book, I believe, in her Orc Sworn series. This one I ended up giving 3.5/4 stars, and it did come out at the beginning of the month, which you can read the entire series on Kindle Unlimited. Basically, these are monster romances, or orc romances to be specific. So with the usual monster romances, I feel like they are more sweet, the heroes in them. And so in this series, the orcs, they're very headstrong and definitely not the sweet type of heroes. This one, basically, the hero has been away from the Orc Mountain for quite a few years, and he wants to go back to show everyone that he is strong and capable and found success and found his mate. So he ends up finding the human heroine and convinces her to do this fake relationship situation with him, and it becomes their road trip romance on the way back to Orc Mountain. This whole series has a really great found family aspect. I really enjoyed seeing all the familiar characters again that we've seen. We even get to see some of the previous couples, some orclings, just all of these things happening at Orc Mountain. There was definitely some healing and emotional moments in here as well. Just know that this entire series, there is definitely tons and tons of fluids being tossed around all over the place. So just know that before you jump into the series. Next up, I read A Merry Little Meet Cute, and this was an author duo collab between Sierra Simone and Julie Murphy. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This was a really fun holiday romance. So in this one, the heroine is actually a plus-size adult film star, and then she ends up getting hired on to work on a Hallmark-esque type of holiday charming family movie. This one, definitely don't let that cutesy cover fool you. It delivers on the steam and the spice, and if you're in for something a little less tame than Hallmark, definitely check this one out. So this one, when the heroine is cast in the movie, she has to kind of keep her identity under wraps and her other profession. She's filming a movie for a very wholesome kind of family movie channel. And then the leading actor in the film is actually a former boy band bad boy who used to be the heroine's crush growing up. This one, I love the mutual pining. The hero actually knows who the heroine is right from the start because he follows her on one of her accounts. The tension in here was so well done. I just loved all the side characters and their families, and just a whole fun time. This one's not a surprise. You know the entire time that her cover is going to be blown of who she actually is. But this one I thought was definitely a fun read, and definitely one that I enjoyed for when you're in the mood for holiday but with spice. Next up, I read Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. This one I gave 3.5/4 stars. This one was supposed to be kind of witchy, magical realism, but I thought the fantasy and magical realism aspects were a little too light and was definitely leaned more onto the mystery suspense going on in the story. I did like the setting of the small secluded island and seeing the characters kind of go back there and kind of unsolve these mysteries from the past. I think some of the middle of the story did drag on for me a bit, but otherwise I enjoyed this one. This was my first time reading anything from this author. Next up, I read Your Mean One, Matthew Prince. This was actually the Ravished by Romance book club pick for November, which is the book club put on by Jess from Peace Love Books and Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers. This one is an MM holiday romance, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. This one I really enjoyed the beginning, and I thought it had a lot of promise, and then it kind of started to drag for me, and I just kind of lost interest, and I wasn't super pulled into the characters. This one is a Grumpy Sunshine opposites attract romance. So in this one, Matthew Prince is one of the main characters, and he is from a uber rich family. And at the beginning of the story, he ends up purchasing an entire island. And so his family is whoa, you're way out of control. We need to rein you back. We're going to send you to your grandparents for a while until you can get your life under control. So they kind of send him to his grandparents to kind of clean up his rakish party boy antics and the spending frivolously. So when he gets there, he ends up meeting Hector, who actually lives with his grandparents and kind of helps them out. And Hector is the total opposite of Matthew. He is very gruff and kind of stern, and they actually end up having to share bunk beds in a room at his grandparents' house. So we see these 20-something-year-olds deciding to work together to try to plan the holiday charity gala for the local small business association. So Matthew is hoping that he can prove to his grandparents through this that he has changed, and then he'll also help out Hector and pay his way back home to his family. I think if you enjoy shows like Schitt's Creek, you'll enjoy this because it has that very rich main character being sent to a small town and kind of having to discover their over-the-topness and kind of, help the small businesses there and things like that. I did think this one dragged on for way too long. It was very repetitive. I wanted Matthew to kind of learn the error of his ways a little sooner into the story. The romance aspect as well was just a little too slow burn for me and very light on the romance that was there. I did like the mental health rep in this one though. Matthew has generalized anxiety disorder, and so he also has some anxiety attacks, and I liked seeing him open up and talk to Hector about that. But otherwise the story was just okay, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. Next up, I read an arc of What Was Meant to Be by QB Tyler. This one is out now though, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. So I ended up getting an arc of when I saw QB in Vegas at the book signing I went to. So QB Tyler writes Forbidden Age Gaps, and this one is my favorite from her by far. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. In this one, the hero is actually best friends with the heroine's parents, And so he has been in her life the entire time that she was growing up, always around. She's always crushed on him. And this is actually their second chance romance. So I really liked in the story how we get flashbacks throughout the story of their moments together and kind of the evolution of their relationship throughout the years. It really added to the tension and the angst of their whole relationship. So in this, the hero comes back, and him and the heroine had a relationship a couple years in the past, but now they're broken up and she is actually engaged to somebody else. So he comes back to win her heart. I just love so much about this. I love the steam. I love the flashbacks. I love their relationship and their chemistry. We even get some pegging in here, which was amazing. Next up, I read Goddess Abducted by Scarlett Peckham, and this is one of her novellas or like short stories that she wrote for the Erotics of Charlotte Street. This one you can get from her newsletter. This is the second installment in this. I've read every single thing that Scarlett Peckham writes. This one I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it's a really fun but super short story. So this is a historical romance series. It is centered around a whipping house, or like a BDSM type of house. This is a great little one-night romp set after a All Hallows Eve ball with some fantasy kidnapping, a highwayman, and kind of the captive seducing the captor. So I had a great time with this one, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Season of Love, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. In this one, the heroine, Miriam, finds out that her great aunt has passed away. She ends up going back to her hometown where she is estranged from her family. So when she's there, she finds out that her great aunt's Christmas tree farm was left to her and a few other friends, and she has to decide if she's going to stay and try to help out saving the business. She ends up meeting Noelle there, and Noelle has worked at the farm and knew her aunt, and Noelle kind of assumes the worst about Miriam from the start. But they do start to bond while working at the Christmas tree farm together and finding out that they both share a love of art. This was an okay read. Their moments together were sweet, but it is a closed-door romance. There are some heavier topics in this as well, with Miriam's estrangement from her family. Her father was abusive and her mother is still married to him, kind of her childhood of growing up in an abusive household. And then with Noelle's character, she is a recovering alcoholic. So it does focus on that and kind of her journey with sobriety. Next up, I read Somewhere I'll Find You by Lisa Kleypas. Here is the cover, and then here is the step back. This is the first book in her Capitol Theater series, and this one I ended up giving 4 stars. So this series does center around the theater, Capitol Theater, and in this one, the heroine is an actress. This one I thought had a super interesting and fascinating premise. So basically, the hero and the heroine are already married, but they don't know one another. Their parents actually married them when they were children without them ever meeting or ever knowing one another. So basically, the hero, when he was 4, his father married him off to the heroine because he, the father, needed money from the heroine's family to kind of help him get out of debts. So the heroine finds out that she's married when she's about 12 years old, and so they've always known that they're married. They just never have met one another in person. Like, they know one another's names, but that's it. And so the heroine, working as an actress, she has taken on a stage name, and so she actually ends up meeting the hero one night at the theater. And the hero has actually been searching for his bride for years, but under her real name instead of her stage name. So when they meet, he doesn't realize that he's meeting his bride, but she actually does know him, recognizes his name, and she realizes that they're married, but she still kind of wants to get to know him. So in this one, the hero is instantly taken with the heroine, and he wants to have dinner with her and says he'll invest in the theater if she comes and has dinner with him. So she tells him right away that she is married and they can't be together without telling him that, it's actually you I'm married to. I loved this. I loved seeing him kind of want her as his mistress, because he's like, hey, that's fine that you're married, like, let's just be together. After a bit, of course, he does figure out that they're married to one another, but at that point, like, they're already invested in each other, and I just liked seeing how the story played out. I loved how the hero is possessive and protective. This was written in the mid-90s, so it definitely has that older school vibe with the hero, which works for me. I loved in this how the heroine is actually the one who doesn't think that their marriage is gonna work. She's like, yeah, we're just having fun, but like, we're gonna get a divorce and move on with our lives, because he'll never want to be with a woman who is independent and an actress. You do get some other woman drama in here with the hero's ex-mistress, but like, the drama of it all didn't bother me, and I really liked how it added to the story. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Then I read Because You're Mine, the second book in the Capitol Theater series. Here is the cover, and there is the step back. I ended up giving this one 5 stars and really loved it. So I've been working on Lisa Kleypas's backlist for about 3 or 4 years now. This was one of the last few I have to read. I only have 1 other duet from her, and then her 4 original books that I still need to read as well. On this one, it is centered around that Capitol Theater as well. And this one, the hero is the theater owner and an actor who works at the theater. I love a tortured hero, and that is how the hero is in this story. This one, I just really loved all of the tropes. I love the drama. I love the ride that it took me on. So this one starts out following the heroine, and she is 18 when the story starts, and her parents are about to marry her off to like a 50-year-old man. So instead, she decides that she'd rather shame herself to society than have to be stuck in this marriage with this like gross old dude. She decides the best way to force her family and her fiance's hand is to have a scandalous affair. So she sets off and heads to the theater to find the famous actor and the theater owner. And when she approaches him, she's like, hey, do you want to be my lover? So the hero is 30 when he meets the heroine, and he's definitely turned off by her offer and kind of sends her away and is like, get out of my theater, like, no thank you. So the heroine actually ends up trying to stick around the theater because she is determined to make her plan a reality, and she ends up finding the assistant of the theater, who is actually the heroine of the first book of the story. And so she offers to be her assistant and gets a job working at the theater. So the hero has to deal with kind of working around her and seeing her all the time. The hero definitely has that she's too young for me and I'm too troubled for her like storyline going on, which I love. Heroine in this ends up renting a room and living with a former actress who is now like retired and an older woman. And so she stays with her, and I loved their conversations together and how her story kind of fit into this book. Excellent caretaking scenes in here, which were just great, seeing the heroine take care of the hero and then him in turn taking care of her. There was quite a few like surprises and family secrets and all sorts of things popping up in the story, and I just really loved the drama of it all and that kind of mid-90s Lisa Kleypas. So yeah, 5 stars for this one. I definitely enjoyed this Capitol Theater series, and it's one I recommend to check out from her. Next up, I read Quarterback Sneak from Candy Steiner. This is the 3rd book in her newest like college sports romance series. This one I ended up giving 4 stars to. I've read the entire series so far, and so far my favorite is still Blindside, which is book 2 in the series. So in Quarterback Sneak, this is actually a sort of forbidden-ish romance between the coach's daughter and then the hero, who is the quarterback of the team. And it has the forbidden aspect because the coach / the heroine's father tells the team and the hero not to date or get involved with his daughter. So this one, on the day that the hero meets the heroine, he falls for her immediately and wants to get to know her. She's also majoring in sports medicine, and so she's going to be working with the team as well. And her father / the new coach of the team right away tells the entire team, like, do not get involved with my daughter, leave her alone and stay away from her. Story jumps forward a couple months later, and then the heroine actually ends up moving into an apartment complex that she becomes neighbors with the hero. Now he has to keep his hands and eyes off of her at the stadium as well as at home. This one does deal with some heavier, kind of more emotional storyline, including some self-destruction habits and grief for the heroine, and then the hero as well. He lost family members in his past, and so they kind of both bond over that grief that they have. I did like the balance though of the romance and the heavier emotional side of the story. We do see the hero kind of protecting and caring it for the heroine, which I like to see, and I thought it was fun that the hero kind of gardens. He does vegetables and like flowers and has his whole like garden set up at his house. And I like seeing the sneak peek in here as well for the characters and the story of the last book in the series. This one was pretty good. It was solid for me, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read Heartless by Elsie Silver, and this was a 5-star read for me. It was everything that everybody said it was and more. I ended up loving it so much, which I actually was a little worried going into it because the first book in the series, Flawless, I didn't love it as much as everybody else. I think I gave it like 3.5, 4 stars. So I was a little bit wary by all of the like hype for this book, but it definitely lived up to it for me. This book was just like perfect for me, and I had no issues or no faults with it. It's definitely going to be on my favorites of the year list. In this one, we have a grumpy, selfless rancher, single dad hero, and then this Spitfire heroine who comes into their life and becomes the nanny for his son. So we do get that close proximity because the heroine starts working as the nanny for his son and moves in with them for the 2 months. And then we also get age gap as well. She's 25 and he is 38. We get that grumpy hero, sunshine heroine trope as well, and I just really love the ranch setting for this book. So the hero, Cade, has taken over his family's ranch, and ever since he was young, he has been the one to take care of everybody else around him. He is definitely the embodiment of actions speak louder than words. Taking care of his family and loved ones is just being kind of a caretaker and more selfless. I loved Willa. She was making me laugh as soon as she comes into the hero's life, which they actually meet at the coffee shop when she drops her purse and some items fall out, and then he picks it up realizing that it is her underwear. Willa is best friends with the heroine of book 1, who is actually the sister-in-law to be of the hero of this book, and she's there to visit her friend when she finds out about this new job opening for the hero needing the nanny. The banter in this was amazing. It's funny, it's sexy, it's such a fun time. I loved the hero's son. He has a 5-year-old son, and I loved all of his interactions in the story as well. The text between everybody in the story was just so much fun. Like, not even 20% into this book, I knew it was a 5-star read, and I knew it was going to be a new favorite of mine. So Cade is just a grumpy single dad. He doesn't have a lot of trust in people because of an ex in his life, and he just focuses on his ranch, his family, his son. And then I love seeing Willa enter their life and take care of him and his son and put him first. This one has some amazing hot tub times. The heroine has piercings. There is some sick caretaking scenes. The post-it notes the hero leaves. The convos with his dad were cracking me up at the end of the story. And I just love the way that Willa pokes and prods at Cade in the entire story. There was seriously nothing wrong with this book for me, and I loved it so much, and I'm so excited to find out what Elsie Silver will be writing next. Next up, I read Hush Darling by Avery Kingston. So in this one, the heroine is pregnant and on the run from an abusive husband, and she ends up stuck in a snowstorm, and that is how she ends up running into the hero, who is actually deaf. In this one, I was really impressed with the deaf rep in the story. And in the author's note at the end of the story, she talks about how she was in an abusive relationship in the past and how she used some of those experiences of her own in this story. So at the beginning of the story, the heroine finds out that she is pregnant and she is still in this relationship with this abusive, controlling husband. And so she decides not only for herself now, but for her baby, she needs to get out of this relationship. So she ends up faking her own death to try to escape from him and goes on the run. So she gets stuck in a snowstorm and ends up hiding out at these cabins that she finds. And that is actually how she meets the hero, because he owns the cabin rentals that she stays in. And then the hero has actually been living in solitude for the past few years in the cabins, kind of dealing with his own loss and grief and regrets from the past. So he and the heroine actually end up meeting. They hit it off right away and it becomes their romance, which was really sweet to see. This is a shorter book, so it's like 250-ish pages, maybe a little bit longer. And so it does move very fast, which was my only issue with the book. I wish we got a little bit more time between the hero and the heroine because it just jumps into everything really quickly. But yeah, I thought this one was super sweet. I gave it 4 stars. Definitely content warning though for the domestic abuse and violence that's happening at the beginning of the story. Next, I read A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. This was actually the book club pick for November, put on by Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa and their new historical romance book club. This one I ended up giving 3 stars. I really enjoy the heroine in this and the kind of different setting, being in Paris in like the late 1880s. I love that the heroine is a badass, headstrong Dominican heiress. She actually comes to Paris at the beginning of the story with 300 casks of her family's rum because she wants to expand their 3-generation ran business. So it actually becomes a marriage of convenience with her and the Scottish hero that she meets in Paris. He is taken with her from the very start, which was fun to see. I sadly didn't feel super connected to the romance in this one or the hero really at all, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read The Mistletoe Bet by Maren Moore. This one I gave 3 stars to. This is a really cutesy novella Christmas romance. So in this one, the hero is the heroine's childhood crush as well as her brother's best friend. And he has stayed living in their small town and became a doctor. And the heroine actually is back in their small town just for the holidays. The heroine actually hates Christmas. And so the hero decides for the 7 days that she's back, he's going to convince her that Christmas is great and prove to her how awesome it is. There was some mutual pining in this from both of them. It does move pretty quickly, which I mean, it is a short novella, so I kind of expected it. But after day 1 of his plan, they're already sleeping together. And I just wanted a little bit more time, maybe like more tension, more buildup for them. But if you want a short little Christmas novella with all the holiday activities packed in, this is definitely it for you. There was a Christmas tree farm, trimming the tree with all the decorations, ice skating, a Santa visit, baking Christmas cookies, and just all the holiday dinners and parties. This one's on KU and I gave it 3 stars. And then the next 4 books I read, they're actually all Thanksgiving romance novellas, which I'm having an entire Thanksgiving romance recommendation video coming out in a couple days from this posting. So I'm not going to talk about the books in this video. I'll just quickly tell you what I read. So you'll have to wait to see my thoughts and reviews on these books in that video, which once it's live, I'll link it in the description of this video. So I read A Tale of Two Cities, a Thanksgiving novella by Alexandria Warren. I read Thanksgiving Taste Tester by J.C. Wolfe. I read Thankful Cafe by Layla Rogue, and I read Thanksgiving Romance at Home in Davis Crest by Vicky Childs. Next up, I read Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. This is the first book in her Small Town series, and this was my first time reading this author, and I had a great time with this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is a friends to lovers, fake dating, set at a Christmas tree farm romance. This one, the heroine purchased a Christmas tree farm about a year ago, and when she purchased the farm, she actually took on all of the former owner's debt as well, and so the farm is struggling financially, and she wants to save her business. So she ends up entering into a social media contest to win the $100,000 cash prize, as well as to get that publicity from a social media influencer as well. But then on the application, the heroine actually ends up writing that she owns the Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend. And then of course she has no boyfriend, so she has to think quickly, and she decides to ask her best friend to pretend to be her boyfriend. So the hero and the heroine have been best friends for 10 years, and I loved all of their history and chemistry that they had. This one isn't super Christmassy, like it takes place in fall and leading into winter and their Christmas tree season. So if you want a read that it's lighter on Christmas, then definitely check this one out. I liked how both the hero and the heroine had been secretly wanting one another for years and never acting on it and kind of being too afraid to disrupt their friendship. I thought this was just super sweet and fun, and I'll definitely check out more from this author in the future. Next up, I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, and this is the follow-up to her book, It Ends With Us. I was actually really excited for this book when it was first announced because It Ends With Us I really enjoyed. It deals with an abusive relationship and kind of getting out of that. But then the closer it got to release date, I kind of became less excited about it, and then seeing some friends' early reviews as well when it came out, and then kind of being like not as impressed with it, kind of made me not that excited to get to it either, and so I actually put it off for a few weeks. So I definitely did lower my expectations for this going in, and I think that actually helped because I actually ended up really liking it. it, and I gave it 4 stars. But yeah, I was just wrapped up with all the characters, all the emotions, all the like side stories going on. Made me feel all the same feelings again that I had when I read the first book in the series. But yeah, I don't know, it worked for me. It's not like an all-time favorite, but I thought it was really solid and I liked what it was, so 4 stars for it. Next, I read The Duke in Question by Amelie Howard, and this is her newest book that just came out this week in November. This is the 3rd book in her Daring Duke series, which I have read all 3 of the books, and this one is actually my favorite in the series. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This one is a spy historical romance, which don't usually work for me, but this one I actually really ended up enjoying. I love the different settings and the kind of the diverse characters and stories we've been getting in this series from Amelie. Picked this one up on audio from my library and I just really enjoyed it. It might have been just like right time, right situation. I don't know, but it worked. I really like the adventure of this. That whole like espionage story plotline worked well. We get some transatlantic journey over to the US. There is some trying to stop a political assassination. The steamy times in this were excellent and I loved it. So in this, the hero is a duke, and so we do get some of those society settings, but he is a retired spy master as well. And then the heroine has her own like secrets and spy situation going on too. So yeah, I thought this one was great and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Last Light by Claire Kent. This is a standalone, but it exists in the same world as her Kindled post-apocalyptic romance series, because we do see the characters from this book in those books as well. So this one I loved it and I gave it 5 stars. I've been really loving this entire post-apocalyptic series by Claire Kent, and this one was a fun time. It included a road trip, there's like an age gap situation going on, survival story, like it was just a great time. So this one is set in the near future where kind of this global catastrophe happened and an asteroid hit Earth 5 years in the past and kind of destroyed like so many things. Like it took out the entire continent of Europe, messed with economy, the environment, definitely the population, like it just messed up the entire world. Now it is 5 years later after the impact and daily life is dangerous, it's very isolating, and everybody's just having like survival stories. The story opens up with the hero and the heroine running into one another, and they realize that they actually knew one another in the past or before the impact happened. They lived in the same town. The heroine had been living with her grandparents and the hero was actually a mechanic at that town. So the hero offers for her and him to travel together, but because of how the world is nowadays, the heroine is wary of anybody's help, especially a man, because like the world is definitely dangerous and people are doing some shady things. So she's cautious and tells him like, no thank you, I'm fine on my own. So later on, he actually ends up coming to her aid when she gets surrounded by some drunk people and they decide to start traveling together. So I love this, the tension between the characters, it is just so heightened with that kind of close proximity, having to share beds, stay together while they're trying to survive on the road together. The hero definitely thinks he's too old for her, and so he's very surprised when she one night is like, hey, I want to feel something like happy and hopeful and like joy in this very like dark world we're living in, so like make me feel something good here. Claire Kent's heroes in the series are always a bit gruff and grumpy, but they fall so hard for the heroines, and it just always works for me. Really like seeing the harsh realities of kind of the survival and the dangers out there that everybody is dealing with in the series, mixed with seeing them find comfort with one another and kind of just seeing hope in the world. I thought the hero and heroine were just so sweet together. I really love romances where it's just the hero and heroine in this very like isolated situation, which we got tons of them on their road trip. Like it is just them two together and I love to see it. So yeah, 5 stars for this and definitely a favorite of mine. Next up, I read Villain I'd Like to F, which is a historical romance anthology put on by Joanna Shupe, Sierra Simone, Ava Leigh, Adriana Herrera, and Nicola Davidson. This is following their other anthologies, so they've had Duke I'd Like to F, Rig I'd Like to F, and then this year's is Villain I'd Like to F. I read an arc of this one, but it is actually out now, and I had a great time with it. I gave it 4 stars. I read all the novellas in here from the authors, but my favorites were from Joanna Shupe and Adriana Herrera. So in Joanna Shupe's, it is a Gilded Age New York setting, and the heroine actually finds out that her father, who's kind of running for mayor, has been kidnapped, and so she sets out to find out where he is, and she ends up going to the leader of Hell's Kitchen gang to try to find out if he can help her find her father. So it ends up becoming their romance, and it is a great time. Joanna always delivers on a fun carriage scene, and this one did not disappoint. So the hero ends up telling the heroine that he will help her depending on what she's willing to do for his help. Then Adriana Herrera's is actually a Prohibition era 1920s set MMF romance, and it is set on the sea, and it is between a rum runner, a gangster, and a singer. So the heroine actually sneaks on board a ship that is set from the Caribbean to New York because she wants to get to Harlem and kind of become a jazz singer. And then one of the heroes is the gruff captain, and then the other hero is a crewman on the ship. So it becomes a romance between the three of them, and it is a great time. There are separate times together. There is the trio together. Like, it all just delivers. And then Ava Lee's romance in this is a romance between two 40-something-year-olds. They are kind of working together to try to separate these young lovers, and they are falling for one another instead. Sierra Simone's is a medieval sapphic romance that is set in the year 1068. And then Nicola Davidson's is a romance between a gaming hell owner and a dowager duchess. The heroine is 20 years old and her husband has died, and now she is forced to live with her brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And when they owe money to the gaming hell owner, he actually comes to collect, and they're like, hey, take the heroine and go use her for like a night as a payment. So he ends up taking her as his mistress for a week. It is their time, lots of praise king, lots of toys. It's a fun time. Next up, I read Winds of the Storm by Beverly Jenkins, and this is the second book in her Levesque family series, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. In this one, the heroine actually ends up saving the hero's life during the height of Civil War, and she is a spy. And then they meet later on in New Orleans. She is actually undercover working as a madam in a brothel, and then he is a hotelier living in New Orleans. So she knows who he is right away, but he doesn't know who she is until later on into the story. So this one I really enjoyed. I love their connection and chemistry. I really love the Levesque family, so seeing all of them in here was just a fun time. The hero's brother has had books in Through the Storm, which was the first book in the series, and then Rebel as well was one of his other brother's stories. But the Levesque family makes appearances in multiple Beverly Jenkins books. So yeah, this one was a fun time and I gave it 4 stars. And then lastly, I read Visions of You by Catherine Cowles, and this is a freebie prequel novella that she has. You can get it on her website. She has the free ebook and a free audio as well. This one is a novella. I gave it 3.5 stars, and it is kind of the prequel to her new Lost and Found series. It's going to be dropping in January. So this one is short and sweet, but it has that romantic suspense that Catherine Cowles always delivers on. And it's a small town novella with a bodyguard and best friend's brother romance. So in this one, the hero works for a security company, and he finds out from his sister that her best friend, the heroine, is actually having some stalker drama, and so he jumps in to protect her. So the heroine is a YouTube singer who actually puts all of her music online. She's been getting some like very dangerous, stalkerish, possessive letters and notes from somebody online. So this was just a super quick read. I liked the mutual pining that both of the hero and the heroine had for one another. I thought the romance was balanced well with all of the danger elements of the story. So it's just a quick read. I gave it 3.5/4 stars. We do get a glimpse in this of the next book in the series, which is Whispers of You, and it comes out in January. The hero of that book, Holt, he is actually the boss of the hero in this novella. So those are the 25 books I've read so far for November. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the ones I've read, or maybe what your favorite read of the month has been so far. So far for the month, my favorites have been Heartless by Elsie Silver, Because You're Mine by Lisa Kleypas, and Last Light by Claire Kent. Those have been my only 5-star reads for the month. I'm definitely hoping for more for the last half of the month. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.